Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Joyce Wilson-Sanford. Joyce is an executive coach working with organizational development executives who are facing the challenges of a new kind of workplace. She is a strategic organizational and leadership development expert, specializing in organizational innovations, large culture change, senior level leadership development, and organizational transitions of all kinds. She is a former executive vice president of strategic organizational and leadership development at the Delhaize Group, a global food retailer. Joyce also co-hosts the popular Bob and Joyce Talk HR and OD podcast. I'm excited to have her on the show to learn from her experiences in organizational and leadership development. So Joyce, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
It's good to meet you, and I'm excited to talk to you about all of your life experiences with leadership and organizational development. But I wanted to start with organizational development. For those who may not be familiar with that subject, explain what that means.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I should have talked to you ahead of time. People, there's something called the OD network. If you really want to know what it is, they've got a great model and you can go and see how complex it is. It's really assessing where an organization is and helping it grow the idea to where it wants to go, and then removing the blockages to that growth, freeing organizational energy. And so you look at everything from structure to interpersonal relationships, to leadership, to toxicity, to what I loved about it, it was both broad and deep. So formally, it's that what you do after it's an intervention to enhance organizational performance and satisfaction.
So where do you get involved when you're in a role like that? Is it like after an acquisition? Is it when you have maybe a region that's not performing well? I mean, or when are you called into action?
And we are all of those, but you see, I was hired to do organizational development in a company. So when you're in the company, oh boy, how can I put it? First of all, I used to tell everybody that worked for me, because I grew a department.
Yeah.
First of all, you serve accurately what the organization says it wants and needs. You do not know better than the company or their leaders. Stay with that reality, serve it. It's going to give you credibility, and it's going to give you knowledge about the what is. And when you do that, 2/3 of your time, then you buy 1/3 of freedom to really innovate and create.
Yeah.
And that is how it works. So I don't know how people do it coming in from the outside, but I worked with everything from acquisition to new CEO establishment to DE&I introduced to, you name it, crises, large events. I was very good at creating conversations among 350 people that felt intimate. So you smell the need, you define the need, you talk to 1 million people, you listen, an idea pops up, and then you go sell it. And if it holds water, you can sell it. If it doesn't, you change it. You do not know better than the people running the organization. I did not let my people say, they just don't get it. Well, if they don't get it, then help them get it.
That's an interesting perspective. I think a lot of people in, maybe mid management would give up when they can't convince upper management of something that they think they want to get done. But as you just said,
But listen to how you worded that.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
they can't,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's incumbent on them to communicate in a way that is effective and that can get the attention of upper management. So, I mean, because we're dealing, in an upper management, and I've been in some senior positions, is you got a lot on your plate, right? You
Oh my
can't,
Lord, yes, you do.
right? And so, any day there can be, you're dealing with multiple crises, multiple issues, big change projects. So an employee comes to you and say, we really need this. You're like, do we really need that? I mean, so convince me, Make a
And
compelling case.
I believe in co-creating through conversation. How about that
Yeah.
for 3 C's? Um, so, and that's why traveling with someone or supporting them in another meeting, you can have lunch and you can um, begin to grow an idea. I always had the germ of an idea, and at another time we could go into some of those big things that happened. But I always ended up co-creating,
Hmm.
especially so for instance with store managers who were really against having some of these 350 person conversations. I said, no, you're the host at the table. You got to make them feel at home. It's your meeting. You're going to run that
Hmm.
meeting. And I had them on my side forever after. And I said, you did a beautiful job. We didn't need to pay anybody to come in to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if
Yeah.
that answers
That's,
your question.
yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think one of the things we were talking about before we press record was the idea of acquisitions. And I was involved in a lot of
Mm,
acquisitions in my corporate days. And one of the challenges I found is that you have maybe in one case, I combined three different businesses. We combined two businesses of one company and we acquired another company. We put them all in one site. And I was the site manager. And so there was three distinct cultures I was trying to
mm.
squeeze into one building, and
Isn't it
that's a
amazing?
challenge when you do something
Yeah.
like that. It was probably one of the more interesting things I ever did in my career.
How many people?
When it was all said and done, about 380 maybe or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conversations galore.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I remember starting with the top group because I ran the discussions among the three CEOs um, that were going to run the companies and the acquisition and all that. And it was pretty stiff until I said, oh, honest to goodness, let's get it over with. Somebody tell of your biggest, stupidest, dumbest mistake. Let's so that we can all just be real.
Ah,
And then I started with mine. And then later they used to say, Joyce has a million of them. Let her give one of her failures. So,
I like
but
that. I think it's yeah, well, I mean, I think you're giving these people permission to be vulnerable. And it's a way to break the ice and to say, hey, we're all just people here in this
and
room.
they laughed their heads off because they had
Yeah.
all done like, did you really have a cow in this store? Yeah, we did. What was I gonna say? Oh, I know another thing I did during that time. If I had three under one roof, every twice a week, I would bring together 25 people, different people from different functions, and they were different global areas to say, what do you think they don't understand about you?
Mm.
What makes it hard to work with them? And the one question that was really great was to have to say, I think that you think. And everybody in the room, from the Greeks to the Thailand to whatever, said to the Americans, we, no, America said, we think that you think that we're arrogant. And everybody clapped.
Oh, so it was true.
They
Yeah,
did.
it
They
was
said,
true.
wow, we're so shocked you know it.
That is actually one of the bigger challenges is when you're dealing with cross-cultural
Mm,
meetings, teams. And
yeah.
I led an R&D team. Half of it was in Mexico, half of it was in the US. And I remember that I think the folks in Mexico always felt like they were the second class citizens, that like because
Mm,
all the leaders were in the US. And
mm,
so I tried to reorganize where we had some of the leaders in Mexico, and we used to do a weekly meeting where we would have we would set it up with the back then it was the video conferencing. It wasn't like Zoom like
yeah.
we have today, but we had
Yeah.
a we had a video conference, and I purposely put the table in Mexico and the table in the US to where so it looked like we're all sitting at the same table every week.
Wonderful.
And so I tried to get it to we were on the same team. We
Hmm.
weren't two separate
Hmm. It
teams.
matters.
Yeah.
I mean, little things. There are funny little things that you do in the moment that shift the energy.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the things you have to do when you're thinking about people and perceptions and like you said.
And differences, and it's really hard that in DE and I work, they have practice groups or they have groups that that need support and being heard and validated and all of that. And I always wanted to spread it to more differences,
Yeah.
not the obvious, but even so, even if it is, whether it's I'm not going to get it right, LBJ,
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, because I'm working with a company now where the pronouns, they're helping me get it right. But one of the more powerful questions I asked in a large group before doing the DE and I work was, where do you feel different and you love it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And where do you feel different and you want to hide it? And had
That's a
everybody,
great question.
it
Yeah.
was a great question. And what
Yeah.
it did was lay a groundwork for it. Now we're going to break up into differences that we can see in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
People over 60, Black pride groups, whatever it was. And then we kept coming back to, at every level, there are differences. How do we
Yeah.
see them? And how do we respect them? And how do we enjoy and use them?
Yes. I love that. I have this theory, and I'm always afraid to say it because it seems um but it makes sense in the way I lead people. Is I say to myself that the ultimate minority is the individual. We are
Mhm.
all
Correct. I
uniquely
love
different,
that.
whether
I love
we
that.
are, and I'm afraid to say it because I know, it doesn't
Oh,
kind of fit with a lot of things, but I really do believe that. Like I'm a man, but I'm also, I'm also in my 50s. And so so there's generational differences. I'm a New
mhm.
Englander, you're a New Englander. So I have some regional things.
I'm
So
a blue collar kid. I
yeah,
was,
I'm a blue
yeah,
collar kid. So yeah,
yeah. I'm a bookworm.
yeah,
I like to talk.
so I think each time, we all have like significant differences, and I have always loved bringing a team together that is full of people with different backgrounds, and bringing them together and working and building unity, and towards an objective, because that's what we did in
Oh,
the
yeah,
military. They threw a
yeah,
bunch of people on a ship and locked the submarine,
yeah,
and we went out to sea and we figured it out.
yeah. I like that idea a lot. What was I gonna say? I don't know. It went away. It'll come back.
Yeah, but I think that's I think when we approach that, the other thing too is one of the things I talk in my business is that respect is like the number one thing. Respect each other, and that is that's a really good basis for being able to deal with people who are different than you. Is that you start off with respect, and then
And
we have the conversations about our different ways that we view the world.
yep. And how do you keep that from being BS?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
think it's about authenticity and being genuine
yes.
as a leader. Yeah, yeah,
And also calling it out when you see that it isn't.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
uh, we could talk about a lot of things. I
Well,
did, you're talking about strategic leadership. I worked with 25 CEOs.
yes, yeah.
They, boy, are they all different? And then those that led with their strength and it fit with the company was great. But wow, there is no one size fits all.
There is no one size fits all. Exactly right. Yeah,
Thinking about
exactly
the
right.
differences and yeah, and
Yeah,
I had,
yeah.
yeah,
So what,
yeah.
let me shift gears a little bit, talk a little bit about leadership. I was looking through some of your materials, and you say that leadership in the new era is about being and not doing. And I was
Mm.
interested to know your thoughts about that. So what do you mean by that? And you say there are a number of skills that leaders need to master in this new era.
Okay, well, I just happen to have a few notes. It is emphasis, I think, on the people thing. They need to be connecting, able
Hmm.
to connect easily across the differences and connecting the right people with the right task. They need to be clear. They need to draw very sharp edges of strategy in particular, so people know exactly what you say yes to and what you say no to. And I wrote here, I'm looking at it, and it means clarity about the values the company uses to guide action and
Hmm.
comfort with the close and be able to disclose how decisions are made. I used to say, if we could put this on the speaker or in the cafeteria, what would we be saying?
Yeah.
That shut up a lot of conversations. Um, New leaders need to be control light.
Hmm. What
So
do you mean by that?
not heavy-handed.
Okay.
So I said the demand for clarity will allow for a form of control that is less burdensome and awkward for associates. New
Yes.
generation associates won't stand for it. Sharp clarity on goals and freedom to find a way to achieve them is going to be the way to do it.
Let me throw
So,
this at you. Let me see your thoughts on it. I say that the opposite of trust is control. So
oh,
the feeling that employees have when you're trying to tightly control everything they do is that you don't trust me. You know, that you have to monitor everything that I'm doing. And so I always feel that when I'm in a situation where I see leadership trying to control everything, is that they don't trust the people that they have employed.
yes. And though that's a risk, so you have to be willing. I'm thinking about how I thought, wouldn't it be great to have the secretarial staff set up the boardroom for the board meeting coming from over from Europe and everything. And they made it look like a baby shower.
Oh,
And I just said, great, thanks. That's super. That makes it very happy looking. And the board loved it.
oh, right. Okay.
But my
Okay.
first thing was, oh my gosh, it's pink, it's yellow, it's.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But
that's
I gave
yeah,
up I gave up total control because I was busy. And
right.
I thought, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then for
Yeah,
about 5 seconds, I thought, well, this is one of the worst things that could happen. No, they loved it. So
I love that.
um,
That's great.
I have another one here that says they need to be character proof. Associates have been disengaged and slightly depressed with low energy due to disillusionment with the character of their leaders.
Okay.
Being a leader of character simply means you have to have a good reputation in and out of the company. There is a moral awareness that guides work and self-awareness with personal impact.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
going to refresh people.
Yes.
That takes it's such a, the disillusionment is so heavy to carry
Yes.
and so damaging to optimism.
Well, you see it a lot in the engagement numbers, right? So even,
Yep,
Gallup's been doing this survey for years.
yep,
At best we're, you know, basically 30% engaged, at best, 25-30% of employees are actively engaged at work. And a lot of it is due to the leadership and due to, like you said, disillusionment. One of the things I saw, at least in my corporate career, is that we would work to attract really top talent, right? Young people coming out of college that have worked hard to get their
yep.
engineering degree or some sort of qualification to be in our big company. And this was their dream job. And we would hire them. And then because they were young, we would put them in a corner and give them grunt work to do for years before we allowed
Yeah.
them to do anything difficult. So we take these excited young employee and we basically say, well, you have to earn your way. You're not allowed to make tough decisions
Yeah,
until
we
you've been here
pampered
for
them.
5 years. And by the time they're ready, they're disillusioned.
Yeah,
They're disengaged.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're so great. We had a program for new, especially high potential people that came in um, to learn all kinds of things, but a lot of interpersonal stuff, but also attach them to some project that was big strategically, if only to sit in. And it made all the difference because they were feeling like, well, come on, let me do something interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I mean, I've seen good and I've seen bad onboarding processes.
Yeah, me too.
My personal one, when I came out of the military and went into my first corporate job, was the worst. They gave me a cubicle where the light didn't work. There was a
Yep.
stapler on the desk. I had no computer. It took them weeks to get me a computer. And my boss was fired within 3 or 4 weeks after my hire. So nobody knew who I was or why I was hired, and I didn't know why I was hired. So I literally learned my job by just walking around and talking to people and trying to figure out, well, what do you guys
Which
do
is
here?
perfect, and it's so common. And
Yeah.
especially as I was promoted higher. I mean, I am very proud that I ended up at the very top 9 men with a soft skill supposedly and a woman. So
Yes.
I'm very proud of that. But I had to find my way. I had a leadership retreat that was a 3 day, and one night we had campfires for small ones, like so we had 12 people at each campfire. And I said, just why don't y'all just share how you came to be at Hannaford and what was your first day like? Ah! I couldn't get anybody to go to bed. They couldn't stop talking about how
Oh, I
awful it
love it.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One thing you just keyed in on it, and I think it's an important aspect, and I think leaders need to hear this, is that people love to talk about themselves. Give them
Mm,
opportunities to talk about themselves. And
mhm.
one of the things we can do as a leader is shut our mouths and listen. And I think that we tend to want to talk about ourselves, but really what people want to know is they want to know, do you know my name? And do you know a story about me? Do you
Yeah.
know anything about me? And I
Yes.
think if we give
Yes.
our employees opportunities to tell their stories like that, how did you end up at Hannaford's? How did you end up being part of this company? Those are
Yeah.
interesting conversations, right? And you get to know a lot more about that individual through those conversations.
Well, and the CEO and the head of HR at that time wandered around to those campfires and went, whoa,
Yeah.
something's got to change. And it did. So,
Yeah.
but you've been doing such a beautiful job of listening to me. Thank
That's
you.
well, that's my
I
job. That's what I have to do. I have to
know,
listen.
but thank you.
I have to listen and I have to ask questions. So, um, one of the questions I was going to ask is, when you either through the work that you've done since you retired, or even when you were working in your company, what are some of the flaws you observed in leaders? What are some problems that you saw, you observed, things that needed to be fixed in leadership?
Well, I have a rough draft of a book called CEO Note to Self, Blind Spots of Power. One thing is they didn't know the degree of power they carried.
Ooh,
They didn't feel the weight of who they were,
wow.
and how like one CEO tripped and fell coming into the building, and the next day they had a heated thing there already. It's like, what? And he said, who did that? And they said, well, you fell yesterday. He said, I don't want money spent on this.
Yeah.
um it's very hard to get a read on your own impact, and I wrote an article called "It's Your Task to Ask." And you have to assume if somebody comes to you with negative impact, that they've talked to at least 25 people and that they are watering it down to come to you.
Hmm.
So magnify it by 5, and you're probably going to get a truer read of this, because the power differential just is, no matter how good natured, no matter how egalitarian, no matter how friendly, you at the top especially have the power of life and death. Like you're fired, you're let go, surprise. It's huge power.
Hmm.
And we like to pretend it's not there. It's there. So that's one.
I was going to touch on that a little bit. I think that, that's one area that I do talk about even in my books, is that you are on stage 24/7 as a leader. Everyone knows when you show up, they know when you leave, they know when you got your door shut to your office, they know if you're spending time with employees and walking
Yep.
around. They're
Yep.
observing you at all times, especially too when you, like, I took over a lot of different businesses in my career, and especially those first, that first 2 or 3 weeks, every eye is on you, and so you can make a great impact if you recognize that all eyes are on me right now, and they're trying to learn what is it that's important.
That's right.
What does
How
Rennie
do,
think is important here? And they're
and how
observing
do
me.
I use that knowledge?
And
The
I
other
would
thing,
use that on purpose. I would purposely
yeah,
do things that would get people talking. Like
ah,
I would say things like I had an employee. Well, I would say I would say things like, if you ever catch me without my safety gear, I always carry $40 in my wallet. I'll give you $40 if you ever catch me without safety gear. And it happened
nice.
one time where I had an employee caught me, and he said, "Wait, you're not wearing your safety glasses." And I was like, "Oh shoot, you're right." And I gave him $40. And they were like, and that one act right there, the everyone knew about that.
Yeah,
Everyone in the organization knew about that, because
yeah.
it was one of those things where all eyes are on you. You can really make, you can make an impact by doing that.
And yeah, I'm thinking about that, and how the other, yeah, the other is find a mechanism to listen to a cross section of your organization at least once a month.
Yes. Yeah.
Bring in 25 from any and every level, any and every
Yep.
department, and just, I did town meetings of 350 people just saying what's working, what isn't working, what's an opportunity we're missing, what would make you love coming in the door in the morning. 3 hours worth of listening, listening, listening.
I think that's powerful. Listeners, if you hear that, that's a great thing. If you're not doing that today, do that today. That's
It's
a
your
great
task to ask.
That's exactly right. I love that. We used to do, when I was in corporate, we'd do birthday meetings. So like June, everyone had a birthday in June. Come on into the conference room. We're sitting down with the CEO and talking about what's going on in the business.
Nice,
And it was
nice.
fun. And we just did it every month that way. And we went around and, again, got a lot of good feedback. And one of the things we did too is we print the minutes of those discussions and we post it. So those that weren't in those meetings could also see what happened in that closed door kind of
Mm.
question session.
You
So
have
yeah.
such good instincts.
Yeah. Well, I guess 30 years of in the trenches. So I think I sort of figure some of the stuff out. Yeah.
Well, some people don't.
That's true. That is true.
Some people don't.
That
But
is
I do
true.
want to say, of the 25 that I worked with, and I mean worked with on the daily thing of, this is going to be a hard termination. What do I do? We have to sell this company. Only 2 were truly inadequate to the job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people found a way to grow and use the skill that was needed at the time. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I found as well. That's good. That's good feedback. I have a question for you. So I was listening to one of
oh,
your recent podcast episodes, and
thank
you
you.
you asked a question, and I like this, or you had a concept. It is, and the idea was what workers want from their leader, and I thought that was
Oh,
really powerful. And so, you don't have to share all of it, but what are some of the things that workers want from their
oh,
leader?
I've actually written an article on that. We want to be proud of you.
Hmm.
We want you to be human, but not too human.
Hmm.
It's that whole thing about vulnerable, is like,
Yes.
be in now, be vulnerable. I say, no, be authentic. No,
Explain the difference, because I think this is an important point. The
oh,
difference in authenticity and vulnerability.
um, it fits in with that thing too, that as your leader, we want to know we can lean into you and
Yes.
that we respect you, that
Yes.
you, whether like it or not, and even if it's parental, if you're going to have that kind of power differential in one person, we want to know we can trust you, we can lean into you, and that I don't want to know about your affair. I don't want to know about doing gallows humor about cutting a corner. I don't want you to roll your eyes about another officer when you talk about them.
Hmm.
Um, I want you to know what it's like for me to do my job. I want you to know that I want to be proud of my work. I want you to know that you play an incredibly important part of my day,
Hmm.
and I take it home with me. And I
Yes,
do want you to be authentic. I want to know that you love Reese's peanut butter cups. I want to know that one of your teenage sons is driving you crazy, but I don't want the details.
that's exactly right. And the other thing too, I think with vulnerability, we can say things like, oh, well, I've never really seen this before in my life, so I'm figuring out as I go along. We
Right,
don't necessarily want to hear that from the captain of the ship, like, I don't really know where we're going. I'm going to try to
right.
figure it out as I go along. So one of the things we want from our leaders is competency. We want to know that they're competent. And I
Oh, I
think
think I
that's
even put that. I tend to write everything with C's.
I've noticed that.
It's really weird. But yes, competence is so attractive.
It really is,
So
right?
comforting.
I
Yeah.
mean, think about I always go back to my days on the submarine, right? So when things got really hairy
Oh, yeah.
and like we were in a bad storm or we were facing Soviet ships just nearby,
Yeah.
we all look to the captain. We're like, does he have this? Like,
Yeah.
do you have this? Like, do you know what
Yeah.
you're doing? Right.
Yeah.
We're because our lives are literally in your hands right now.
Yeah.
And we want to know that our captain, when things got, hairy, knew what he was doing. And I think our
Yeah.
employees want that too, is that they like the fact that knowing that we're human and that we're authentic, but they also want to know, do you know what to do when the chips, you know, go down?
Yeah.
Do you know what to do?
In one of our companies, when we were being challenged by Walmart, the CEO just gave a very wonderful lecture about the business mechanics and what you do when somebody enters your market, and got all of us so excited about cutting cost
Yeah.
through that story. So the other thing I think CEOs need to do is have people understand the business dynamics of where they work.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Here's how we make money. Here's how it hurts us. Here how, oh, we share the money. Oh,
No, I think understand how the business works and be able to explain it to the everyone in the organization so they
mhm.
can say it in a way that they get it. I think that's we sometimes at least I saw in corporate we had a lot of guys that knew how to run a business, but they couldn't communicate it to the hourly employee on the shop floor.
Yeah,
They
you have to be able to teach the money making mechanics of the business in simple terms.
yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. That's a great point. So Joyce, I was gonna say we're running get close on time
Yep.
here. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
Isn't that awful? I wanted to say love your work, but
Mm,
may not be possible. But you can bring hope and competence and comfort in doing your job well to those around you. And you'll generate from that, they're wanting to do that. And you can grow hope and competence during this time of real unrest.
mm.
So I
I
think
love
that
that. I love that. I love that. So take the situation you're in and where can you shine a light in the darkness?
that's what I really mean.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it
And
works.
I have a friend of mine that always says, actually, he lives close to you. So I have a friend in North Yarmouth that would say, uh, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. So if you're in a situation where
Mhm.
you're not, you don't love what you do, you might want to look for a place where you do love what you do.
I it's well, Freud said love and work are the two drivers in the world. And you and I were laughing before we came on. We love our work.
Yes. Yeah.
And it is a literal blessing.
Yes. Yeah. And if you don't love your work, find a way to love your work. Life is too short to be
Yeah,
miserable.
or call Bob and me. We'll help you find work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So, how can our listeners find out more about you, your podcast, and your services?
Oh, I asked you to help me with this. Thank you. You do it.
Yeah, we'll put links in the show notes for your website and also the podcast. And the podcast is called Bob and Joyce Talk HR and OD. And we're going to put links in the show notes. And if you haven't already listened to our podcast, I highly encourage you to listen to them. They're fun. We were talking about earlier. If you're older, like I am, you'll
I
remember
am.
Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers from NPR, and these Bob and Joyce are a little bit like that, and they're talking about HR issues, people issues, leadership issues, organizational development issues. It's a great podcast, fun to listen to, so I highly encourage it. And there's a link in the show notes, and we have a link for Joyce's website as well. So find out more about her. She has a ton of information on the website, blog post, all sorts of stuff that really will help you understand this topic more and be a better leader in your company. So Joyce, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I had fun,
I had a
and
wonderful time. Thank you.
it's a pleasure to meet you. And thanks for all the work that you're doing.
May we meet again.
Absolutely. Well, that's
Bye-bye.
it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.